All aboard! Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, football fans of all ages, I am Beast Mike, and you have now arrived at my train of thought. It's also time to continue asking the question, where do we go from here? Our first stop will take us to a place that we kind of expected to be here, and to be honest, some of us probably expected them to be talked about yesterday. We're going to Glendale and the Arizona Cardinals. When is a 4-win season a really good season? It's when a team has expectations so low you'd have to dig underground to find them. I think a lot of people would have argued that before the season began, Arizona was probably going to win maybe 2 games if they get lucky. Maybe the last one if the Seahawks didn't need the game or something like that. Maybe they catch a terrible last place team off guard and handle that game, something like that. Turns out, Arizona actually won 3 games against playoff teams. More on that in a little bit. But the thing that I noticed about the Cardinals overall this season was that they fought hard in a lot of their games. Sure, the Niners pummeled them twice. They're expected to. I did the game where the Browns beat them up and their elite defense handled business. The Rams took care of business against them and kind of punished them. Like, yeah, there were those games. They did exist. But in a lot of games, they fought. And they scratched and they clawed. No, they didn't win a majority of them, but they fought. And you could tell this team was going to be better than expected in the first 3 games of the season, when they probably should have beaten the Commanders, and they definitely should have beaten the Giants. Then they ended up dominating the Cowboys, which was hilarious. Many laughs were had. Arizona did pretty well to hold down the fort without Kyler Murray, with a top 5 run game in the NFL, thanks to James Conner having a 1,000-yard season. And Trey McBride, no matter who was throwing him the football, whether it was Josh Dobbs, who was there for a good amount of the year and then was dealt to the Vikings, or Clayton Tune, or Kyler Murray, didn't matter who, he had a pretty good year and is emerging to becoming a pretty solid tight end. Yes, this team needs receiver help in the worst way. Hollywood Brown, Mike Wilson both had over 500 yards, and they were the only wide receivers the Cardinals had that did such a thing. Rondale Moore and Greg Dortch were okay. They got in where they fit in at times, but neither were real, true threats. Budda Baker is still probably the best player on this team. He played 12 games, had a decent year, but not the Budda Baker year that we kind of come to expect. I did like what I saw from Kazir White. He was productive, although he only played 11 games. So obviously the health does have to be more prevalent. They did get 4 in-outs from Jalen Thompson. Thompson played very well at safety in some cases when Budda Baker could not, but he played pretty well on his own. He played 15 games, but he got 4 in-outs. Good job on his part, leading the team in that statistic. No one else had more than 1, which kind of shows how the Cardinal defense got shredded at times. Arizona, to be honest, I think still overachieved, even with all of the lack of production statistically and lack of production in terms of overall wins. It felt like down the stretch, Arizona was giving people a whole lot of fits. The 2 Pennsylvania games against the Eagles and the Steelers, James Conner got revenge on his old team in Pittsburgh and humiliated the Steelers. Jonathan Gannon, I think, coached basically his Super Bowl in out-coaching Nick Sirianni and company against the Eagles and outmaneuvering them in a tremendous way. That onside kick felt like a trap, and I think it was a perfectly executed one by Gannon. And he got his revenge and kind of humiliated the Eagles all at the same time, costing them the number 2 seed and giving Dallas, I guess, a bit of a late Christmas gift, if you will. The Cardinals, in theory, should be better. They should have good resources to kind of upgrade the talent, because they have to do that pretty much across the board. Not quarterback or running back, or tight end, but pretty much across the board. How do they do it? Well, the free agency situation is not too awful considering the lack of talent on this team. Budda Baker as a club option, I would imagine that Arizona would exercise it. Baker's still a good player. And Hollywood Brown, I think, is a capable number 2, and I think it'd be an excellent number 3 if Arizona could truly improve the receiver room. I think that would be necessary. They don't have a lot of super critical players after that. Greg Dortch is a free agent, yes, but they really don't have a lot of crazy amounts of free agents that's going to jump off the pages at people. Arizona, to their credit, also has a good amount of money to spend. They're 12th in the league in terms of their cap space. They have $51 million in salary cap, and Arizona, in theory, could go to work in free agency and trying to upgrade this talent pool. They also have the option of really creating a crazy, lively daycare center. They've got 13 picks, and they can do a whole lot of damage in rounds 1 through 3. They have 6 picks in the first 90. 2 of them from the Texans, as Houston traded up to get Will Anderson, which turned out pretty well for the Texans, I'd say. I mean, he did win Defensive Rookie of the Year. But they have 2 picks for Houston in the first and the third. They have their own pick at 4, which everyone's pegged to be Marvin Harrison Jr., myself included. They have their own picks, obviously 35 and 66. They have pick 71 coming from Tennessee from a different trade. They have their own picks in rounds 4 and 5. They have Houston's 5th round pick. They have Minnesota's 6th round pick. And then their own 7, the Giants 7, the Browns 7. So Arizona could really go to work here and in theory end up with as much as maybe 5 or 6 new starters on their team on offense and defense, where they could basically upgrade in a whole lot of spots. Arizona, I would say, overachieved. Despite how bad their record looks, despite how bad statistically they look, despite how rough it was when it came to some of the critical guys not playing full seasons. All of this is true. But honestly, the fight they showed, they looked like a team that was better than 4 wins. And that's saying something for the lack of talent or noticeable, hey, look at that guy type of names on that roster. Good job, Arizona. You didn't suck as bad as I thought and as bad as we all thought that you would. And then there's the Chargers. A team with so much talent, a team with so many big names and high-priced stars at the critical spots you need to have. You need a quarterback? Well, yeah, there's Justin Herbert. The best player on the team is Austin Eckler. He's a really good running back. You have receivers, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. They can do that. Josh Palmer's a good number 3. Gerald Everett's a good tight end. You have notable names. Rashad Slater is a franchised left tackle, and Corey Linsley is a really good center. You have 2 excellent edge rushers, and Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. You have Derwin James, an excellent safety, and Asante Samuel Jr. is a really good corner. You have pieces that everybody knows their names. It's like going to a Cheers bar or something. And yet, the Chargers' main piece at coaching was an abject disaster, as we knew he would be because Brandon Staley is just not a good tactician. And the Chargers' other problem on the field was that in gotta-have-it situations, that's a team that generally didn't get it. Gotta have it against Miami week 1. Tua got it. Herbert did not. Gotta have it against Tennessee week 2. Got the ball first in overtime, did nothing with it. Then Tannehill had to have it and got it. You didn't want it against the Vikings and ended up stealing it because Minnesota gave it to you. You kind of didn't want it against the Raiders, but Khalil Mack said you are going to take it and like it. That was a 6-sack game on his part. He had a very good season. More on him in a little bit. You had to have it against the Cowboys, and Dallas basically said you aren't getting it because they're taking it from you. And that missed pass by Herbert was kind of bad. That was really, really bad. Marianne, the Chargers fan, did not have a good evening that night. She was kind of popular, though. That was quite nice. And the season kind of went like that. It was, in the gotta-have-it games, the Chargers were the least likely to get it. Quentin Johnston was a disaster, kind of, sort of, as a rookie. He never got out of the blocks, and when he got to play, he dropped a whole lot of passes. That Packer game one really hurts. And what also hurts is that they had Jordan Addison on the board and opted not to take him. Minnesota thanks you for this particular gift and sacrifice. Brandon Staley's tenure finally ended with a very humiliating 63-piece that the Raiders dropped with one of the greatest NOs of all time, with the Jack Jones kind of backhand pick 6, which was absolutely hilarious. You could hang that picture in the Louvre or something. Anyway, this was a Charger season that was an abject disaster in every way, shape, form, and fashion. The defense was terrible with a defensive head coach, and the offense never really got out of the blocks because Justin Herbert was not very good. Austin Eckler also wasn't very good. Somehow the Chargers' run game was pretty bad. Even with Austin Eckler, they were 25th in the league in rushing. That is not a stat I expected to see. As much as I like Austin Eckler, and not all of it's obviously his fault, and it's just ugly to see that Eckler, who is as dominant as he's been, he had back-to-back years of 20-plus touchdowns, and this was not one of those years. Kind of rough there. Keenan Allen did have 1,000 yards, but even that seems underwhelming. He did miss 4 games, which doesn't help. But it just seemed like this whole Chargers team, like everybody that you wanted to see show up and needed to see show up for the Chargers to make a run and redeem themselves after getting humiliated in Duval in the second half of that game, it just seemed like nobody except for Mac and I guess Allen, because Allen had a good year, really showed up and did their part. Yes, getting humiliated by the Raiders and giving up 63 points just 4 days after the Raiders got shut out by a pretty bad Vikings defense, that's saying something. Although we can hang that Jack Jones pick six in the Louvre. That was an amazing one-handed pick six. That was awesome. At least it was the mercy killing that we needed to see for Brandon Staley's tenure finally coming to an end and him getting fired so he could actually do something competent at head coach. At least there's that. And Justin Herbert should be healthy after the finger injury he had, which knocked him out for the rest of the season. And maybe you would think Keenan Allen will be healthy. Mike Williams maybe comes back. There's a whole lot of maybes here, but that's what we're dealing with. But one certainty that we are going to see is the return of Jim Harbaugh. Finally, Dean Spanos and company decided to put dough up and get an elite head coach. There's no denying it. Harbaugh, no matter where he goes, puts in work and dominates. San Francisco, he put in work and dominated. The Niners were a terrible team before he got there. They became a Super Bowl team when he got there. And then just the last couple of years with Kyle Shanahan, they've gotten back to those ways. And then he goes to Michigan. They were down on their luck. They were down very bad. And granted, the first few years of his tenure at Ann Arbor ended in Ohio State L's and pretty disappointing seasons. Once they got things together in 2021, Michigan then became the best team in college football for a few years. How do we know this? They kept going back to the college football playoff. They had undefeated seasons. There were only losses until last season, where in the college football semifinals, and then they finally broke through and win the national title. Now, sure, he probably Pete Carrolled the flow and got out just in time before the NCAA throws the book at the Wolverines, but he got a national championship, and that's saying something that Michigan could not say since 1997. And now he's back in the NFL, and he's got some work to do with a Chargers roster that's got high-end talent, yet just not enough depth. And the defense, as we saw, was pretty rough and pretty bad when it needed to be. The Chargers also have some very interesting situations and decisions to make when it comes to their free agents. First, the aforementioned Austin Eckler, who has been a really good player for them for many years. He is now finally due to get a very worthy contract. I think he deserves one. Will he be in Los Angeles? Gerald Everett, who's, I think, been a very productive tight end out in LA. He's a free agent. Kenneth Murray, who I kind of like as an inside linebacker. He, too, can test the waters of free agency. They have to make some things happen, and obviously the immortal name of Will Clapp, because a lot of people love the name Will Clapp. He is a free agent. Cam Dicker, who had a very good year last year, he is a free agent, and that was an amazing Pro Bowl promo that he did. That was awesome. I love that very much. It was one of the best we've ever seen in a situation. There's also Mike Davis, although he kind of got burnt a lot when it came to the pass defense. He was kind of one of the main reasons responsible for why they were 30th in that realm this past season. The other one being J.C. Jackson, who they actually traded to New England for basically a bag of chips. It was kind of wild. In any event, the Chargers have some decisions to make. Some of them are also going to be financial in the sense of the cap space, or lack thereof, I should say, that the Chargers have. They are currently 28th in the league, 5th from the bottom, with negative $25.1 million over the cap. And they've got a lot of high-priced salaries that they're going to have to maintain. What are these salaries, you ask? Well, you have 4 guys making over $30 million. You got Khalil Mack making 38. You have Joey Bosa 36.6. You have Keenan Allen making 34.7. Mike Williams making 32.4. Those 4 guys, and then you add in Derwin James making 19.8 and Herbert making 19.3 before Herbert's deal kicks in and Justin Herbert makes a whole lot more money in the coming years. There will be some restructuring happening. There has to be. It's the only way this is going to work. And then eventually you're going to have to pay Rashawn Slater, who has proven himself, when healthy, to be an excellent left tackle. You're going to have to pay him in the $100 millions and probably in the $20 to $25 million per year, because really good left tackles are not cheap. What's also not going to be super cheap, at least after a few years it won't be anyway, if things work out, is the Chargers' first round pick. They're going to have their own at number 5 in this coming draft. The Chargers actually have all of their own picks and no others. No compensatories. They don't have any picks via trades. They just have all their picks straight up, starting with the 5th pick. And they're kind of in a conundrum here. On one hand, this team needs defense in the worst way, but this is a really good offensive draft and a kind of mad defensive one. Do they dare reach on an edge rusher after trading away Khalil Mack if the rumors are true? Do they try to address that really terrible pass defense and go after a corner in a cornerback draft that's not seen to be very strong? Or maybe they do the flashy thing and go get a Brock Bowers and help out Justin Herbert some more. Now, Justin Herbert to me is an interesting case. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he is a productive quarterback statistically. Probably more so Phillip Rivers-like, in the sense of he's going to give you numbers, but he's not going to give you the success that you think you're going to get. I just don't think of Justin Herbert as the guy that can get you over the top. I just don't see it in him. Some people believe that Kellen Moore can unlock what Justin Herbert can be and become the deep ball type of guy that a lot of people want a 6'5", 230-pound dude who can throw the ball super far to be. And it turns out this was a lie. The Chargers offense got progressively worse, while Dallas's offense got excellent in his stead. And now the thought is maybe Pep Hamilton unlocks what Justin Herbert could be. That's the story we're being told anyway. And if it's true, then maybe the Chargers are going to be back to the playoff status that they were before this past season. But what if it's not? What if who Justin Herbert is just a 6'5" guy who's got the arm but chooses not to use it and chooses to be a dink and dunk guy to try to be efficient? What if that's all Herbert is? What if Herbert's only a guy who, in a gotta-have-it situation, isn't good enough to go get it? What if the Chargers are just super cursed? Because, of course they are. Chargering is a real thing. Finding spectacular ways to lose. Brandon Staley deserves the valedictorian award for that. But then there's Jim Harbaugh, who, for the most part of his career, finds spectacular ways to win and win spectacularly. Something has to give here, right? Feels like either Harbaugh and Pep Hamilton unlock Herbert and he becomes the guy that everybody dreams that he can be, or even they can't save it and the Chargers are just mediocre, or even worse, what they just were this past season. So that is the final stop of this train of thought. The next train is going to start at Union Station in Washington, D.C. and head a little south for about an hour, and then there's a bit of a walk or Uber ride. Either way, we're going to see the Commanders. And then from there, we're going to go to Nashville and see the Titans. 2 teams that needed to bottom out finally did. And there's one question for the both of them. Where do they go from here?